Well, the Sacramento Kings officially introduce Doug Christie as their new head coach. This feels like a little bit of a long time coming, but we're going to get into some of the details of the Doug Christie hiring today on the Jeremiah Salmonson Show. Alrighty, well, thank you for watching the Jeremiah Salmonson Show. Go ahead and click subscribe and like the video. That helps the channel out. We much appreciate all of that. So Doug Christie is officially introduced as the Kings' next head coach, gets the interim tag ripped off his title and ripped off and thrown away by Kings front office Scott Perry and ownership Vivek Ranadive. And it was good. You know, he was introduced today by the Kings, kind of something that felt like, you know, we kind of already thought was going to be the case. Obviously, he got announced a couple days ago, but then officially introduced to everyone today. You know, Doug looked great in a nice suit, three-piece suit. Scott was there. Everyone dressed to the nines. It was nice to see Doug kind of get that that ceremony that he definitely deserves as being introduced as the new Kings head coach. Some tidbits from the press conference. Scott Perry was clear in this presser that Doug Christie fit the vision that the Kings have and that he has for this organization. And it doesn't matter that he is a Kings legend. He talked about Doug fitting the bill and being the right guy, regardless of being from Sacramento or being a legend here in Sacramento. And I thought that was an important piece to note, because so much of the discord and, the discourse surrounding the hire has been, oh, well, you know, Doug is just, he's Sacramento's guy, and he has, you know, he's been here all along, and he was kind of the shoo-in for this job, and he didn't really, we would have wanted a normal interview process, things like that, you know, and I understand all those critiques, but Scott really leaned into the fact that Doug is the guy, whether he's from Sacramento or not, or, you know, not from, but, you know, a legend here, has done so much in Sacramento or not. And I think that should put a lot of the conversation to rest on kind of the circumstances surrounding Doug Christie's hire. Now, do you believe that? Is that spin? Is that the organization trying to, you know, get out ahead of something that they clearly see and hear amongst King circles? You know, who knows? Obviously, they're not going to say anything different, but, you know, I think that Scott got ahead of that and, you know, talked about Doug's qualifications aside from his connection to the city. I think is important. It should hopefully get Doug on the right track going into his first full season at the helm of the Sacramento Kings. Doug Christie said that he's excited for the challenge and this new chapter for him. Obviously, you know, felt more like an interview this past season for him. You know, really tough circumstances, and, you know, it's hard for anyone, let alone a rookie head coach, to come into any situation like that. You know, a lot of circumstances surrounding the team, star player getting traded, head coach getting fired, the front office really on the hot seat. You know, all those things were true with Doug's tenure as the interim coach, and now he gets that taken off and is the official head coach for the Kings. So it's going to be really interesting to see. I mean, there were notably a lot of things last season, at the end of last season, that people were critiquing Doug over, with, you know, specifically relating to his head coaching. You know, certain substitutions, certain lineups, drawing up plays, things that a lot of people thought were subpar. And so, you know, I think he has a lot to prove on the head coaching seat. I think he would tell you that. And I think anyone you talk to who's serious would tell you that. But that doesn't mean that, you know, he doesn't deserve a fair shake. And, you know, regardless if you think that this organization went through the searching for the coach the right way, or if they didn't, or, you know, whatever. I tweeted this out the other day, that none of it really matters at this point. The decision's been made, and now it's time for the Kings as an organization to turn the page and see what Doug can do in the head spot at the front of the bench. He's yet to really announce his coaching staff. Obviously, you know, this is very fresh news. Scott Perry's only been here a little over a week. So very fresh news. I'm sure he'll build on that. Here's what Doug had to say when I asked him about if he had any specifics for the coaching staff, as well as Scott Perry, if he gleaned anything unique from the players in his meetings with them. Here, you can take a look. Doug, congratulations.
Thank you.
Just kind of following up on that, do you have any specific names for your staff that you've already picked out, or is that kind of going to be a work in progress?
Jay, why you always be asking those questions?
Exactly.
I know. He's always firing the questions. No, I mean, we're actively going to be pursuing all of that in the coming days. Like you heard Scott, he was 1 week, got another week, and we have to have the ability to sit down and communicate and talk, and we will be doing that going forward.
And then for you, Scott, with your conversations with the players, was there anything that stood out to you, anything that surprised you with the roster that you have here, or anything in particular?
No, nothing that surprised me. I mean, obviously, as I mentioned with Doug, going through a difficult season, that was expressed to me, but a resilient group of guys overall, and I think a lot of them obviously are looking to turn the page. They're excited about the direction we're going to be heading with this ball club, and I'm looking forward to working with them. What transpired in the past. That's over. Really, it's in the rearview mirror. It's a waste of time for any of us now to really think about. It's what do we do today, tomorrow, and the days after that are going to dictate just how well we do.
So Doug obviously hasn't really made any big decisions on his staff yet. He may have, there's a lot of names that float out there like Bobby Jackson that's pretty much going to be on his staff, things of that nature. But he hasn't confirmed anything of that nature yet. And so we'll see what he decides to do as it pertains to his staff. But he did later on in that press conference, he talked about having conversations with Scott Perry, the new Kings general manager, about these things. And with Perry being so well connected as he is, and Perry even talked about, I've basically had more coaching searches than I can count. I think that he will be leaning pretty heavily on Scott to help build out his staff. Obviously, Christie has a deep history in this league. It's not like he's a rookie in this league or doesn't have connections or isn't well connected himself in the league, as a former player and also, being part of a coaching staff in the past and a broadcaster. So he's well connected, but he seems that he might lean on Scott for some of those help with some of those picks on his bench. I think it's important that Doug surrounds himself with a very experienced staff. You look at a guy who's just a very rookie head coach, has said in the past that, he wasn't as too concerned with drawing up plays or doing, the X's and O's and some of those things. He was more focused on some other aspects of the game. So for the new head coach moving forward in that full-time spot, he's going to need to be able to do some of those things better probably than he did last year. And so I have confidence he'll fill out his staff with the appropriate staff that he needs. But it's just going to be interesting to see who he really surrounds himself with. Is he going to have a lot of picks that he played with and guys that he wants to give a shot coaching, or is he really going to go with an experienced bench where he leans on other guys in the organization to help him kind of pick out some of those guys? So it's going to be really interesting to see. A really interesting offseason for the Kings as, we barrel towards next season. I mean, the playoffs aren't even over yet, but the work for the Kings has just begun. And the work for them will continue this whole offseason through the free agency and into the training camp. And I expect the Kings to be ready and prepared to go for next season. I don't know what the roster is going to look like. We really still haven't gotten a ton of insight into what Scott Perry really wants to do. There's a lot of, I asked Scott Perry if he plans to, kind of tear down the roster and do a rebuild style off season. He said no. He wants to look at the players he has and be prudent about it, and in his decision making. So, Sam Amick also came out with a report recently that they don't plan to do any sort of rebuild. I mean, I think that makes sense given Scott's comments at his presser. So it doesn't sound like there's going to be any sort of rebuild, but I'm really curious to see if guys like DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, Domantas Sabonis remain on this team. I certainly think a guy like DeMar might want to go to another situation where maybe there's a little more certainty of winning now, you know, as he gets older and into the final years of his career. He was pretty open about that at exit interviews. So it's going to be interesting to see who on this roster remains on this roster heading into next season. And for Doug Christie, he's got to fill out his staff and from there start to really formulate what identity he wants this team to have. And it seems like it's going to be rooted in defense and toughness and grit and playing the right way. But I think there's a little more that needs to be fleshed out there on the offensive side, maybe specifically. So it's going to be really interesting to see how Doug Christie starts to scheme for this offseason and for his staff and the roster that he wants to put together in conjunction with the front office going into next season. Well, this is the Jeremiah Solomon Show. Thanks for watching. Hit the subscribe button and like the video, and we'll be back with more.